Safety leadership is a complex subject covering many of the challenges you face. It introduces techniques you can use to become a great safety leader. Before we get started, let's cover the most important lessons you'll learn in this course. We use the word safety all the time, everyone does, but we find very few people actually know what the word really means. Do you? Please think about it for a moment. What is safety? What is the definition of the word? If you looked it up in a dictionary, what would it say? The most common answer we get is having no accidents. But that's just the consequence of safety. The next thing we hear is even more vague. Things like acting in a way that, caring about, doing all the right things, etc. It's clear that very few people know what safety means. So how can you have passion for safety if you don't even know what it is? The definition of safety is actually quite simple. Freedom from risk. If you're free from risk, you're safe. For example, if you never back the bus, you're free from the risk of a backing accident. Sometimes you can't completely eliminate the risk, but you might be able to reduce it. If you reduce your risk, you're safer. For example, if you stay back 4 seconds, you reduce the risk of a rear-end collision. That means if you care about safety, you're really saying that you care about removing or reducing risk. So what is the definition of risk? Once again, please give it some thought. Risk is the possibility of bodily injury or damage to property. That means that safety is being free from the possibility of bodily injury or damage to property. This is important. Risk is the enemy. Risk is what we need to get rid of. So where does risk come from? Consider your own operation. Where does risk come from? If we know where it comes from, we can attack the source and get rid of it. Risk comes in 2 ways: unsafe conditions and unsafe behaviors. Let's start with unsafe conditions. Things like worn tires, bad brakes, and faulty steering systems. We can engineer away unsafe conditions. Most organizations do a good job of removing unsafe conditions. In fact, lots of government regulations focus on removing unsafe conditions. However, the majority of risk comes from unsafe behaviors. In fact, 99% of all accidents are the result of unsafe behaviors, not unsafe conditions. When it comes to driving, some examples of unsafe behaviors are following too closely, texting while driving, rushing, backing. But why would a professional driver engage in unsafe behaviors? There are 2 reasons. They lack knowledge and don't actually know about the risk, and they're a risk taker. They're willing to accept the risk. You can educate and train your drivers to better understand the risks and how to avoid unsafe behaviors. But getting risk takers to perform safely is much harder. This course will present some techniques you can use to change everyone's safety-related behaviors. So, if we care about safety, which is removing or reducing risk, we need to teach the drivers to avoid unsafe behaviors. This is the foundation for the driver training course. This course, Safety Leadership, and the driver course work together to help you establish safety norms in your organization. Norms are the accepted way of behaving in a social setting, and safety norms can influence everyone to work together. Managers, supervisors, trainers, and drivers all know the best practices and work together to avoid unsafe behaviors. When safety norms are in place, every driver does it right the first time, every time. Once everyone knows that the goal is to remove or reduce risk, you can teach your drivers to use the 4 safety principles taught in the LLLC Defensive Driving course. Look ahead reduces risk. Look around reduces risk. Leave room reduces risk. And communicate reduces risk. Professionals understand this and use these principles to avoid accidents. Next, you should teach your drivers about all of the specific risks they face every day, such as danger zones, intersections, railroad crossings, lane changing, and backing. The 4 safety principles of the LLLC apply to all of these situations. So, to review, Safety is freedom from risk. Risk is the possibility of suffering harm or damage. That means safety is actually freedom from the possibility of suffering harm or damage. Risk is the enemy. We need to reduce or remove risk. Most risk comes from unsafe behaviors. Unsafe driving behaviors include following too closely, texting while driving, backing, and rushing. You can use the driver training course, and especially LLLC defensive driving, to teach safe driving behaviors and establish safety norms. They help you reduce the risk and achieve the safest transportation possible. As you go through this course, we'll explain these concepts in greater detail and provide ideas on how you can influence the behaviors of your drivers. Were You There leadership will show you how to be a great safety leader. You'll learn how to influence your drivers and get them to avoid unsafe behaviors. That is what safety leaders do.